Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties, episode 26 for season 5. My name is Lee. I'm in Western Australia. I'm joined by Vickers in Canberra, as our long-term listeners will well know.
That sounded like the most robotic introduction we've ever done.
We really
That
need to
is
come up with like some more punchy, I don't know, like a little slogan or something. But I haven't thought
yeah,
of
I
anything.
suppose. Yeah. Well, I think this episode might be one of those controversial ones which just end up attracting a lot of hate mail, or like you guys are fucking shit libertarians or something like that. Just because
I've never been
I
told
think
as
our opinion.
much about how like crap a libertarian I am until now. And it's split between I'm not libertarian enough or I'm too libertarian, and it seems to be very schizophrenic. So this should be
Well,
interesting.
yeah, and the funny thing is, the people lauding the criticism tend to be on both sides of the fence of that argument as
Mm.
well. And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, this is what I've always been saying. Every libertarian movement around the world has more factions than members.
Yes, if you have two libertarians together, you got three opinions between them. So um,
At
anyway,
least.
what we're alluding to is the humble water filter salesman himself, Alex Jones. His removal from Facebook, Spotify,
and
Apple
and
Podcasts,
YouTube.
and YouTube. And
Yeah.
this has brought a great deal of think pieces and outrage and all manner of things. We're also going to sort of maybe go into the James Gunn firing. So the basis of that, well, the basis for all of it. So Alex Jones, if you somehow
I
don't know who he
see.
is a conspiracy
Yeah.
theorist, right wing radio commentator. Has
Well, it's actually a character. So in his divorce proceedings, it was brought up that it's a character that he does.
yes.
So
Well, and also in his
yeah,
defense, he's been sued recently by some of the families from the Sandy Hook shooting,
Sandy Hook.
because he
Yeah, but
made
it's
the
unlikely
claim that
they'll.
Sandy Hook shooting really didn't happen and that the families are crisis actors. And unsurprisingly, very upset, grieving parents of dead children don't take that kind of stuff lying down. So they've
But
sued him,
so
and his
here's
lawyers
the.
have basically said it's a clown act. Um,
Yeah,
and
effectively, and
yeah, well, I mean that's not really
yeah.
relevant to what we're talking about. Uh,
But the point is, no, it is actually relevant because Infowars is effectively newstainment, right? It's effectively the concept of newstainment taken to its logical conclusion. And you know, if his lawyers are to be believed, it's all like it's an act. And to be honest, I've enjoyed that act. Sometimes I find it hilarious, and other times I sit there and facepalm and go like, "No, what's going on here?"
uh,
Uh,
the issue
so
with that is people don't take it as newstainment. So like the
people listen to
obvious comparison
CNN.
would be like wrestling, right? So wrestling is one of those things
Yeah.
where like real genuine athletes put on this performance, and there's a level of reality to it that is they're really throwing themselves around the ring. But you know the meta story is all very silly, but the fans know it's there and they know it's silly. And maybe there was a time in the past where they took it seriously, but that's like long past us. Yeah, the kinds of people who watch Alex Jones, like there's a lot of people who listen to his radio show, which by the way has 2 million weekly listeners. In case anybody thinks that he's been censored, um, and you know, like people actually take it seriously, and he's a serious, serious, serious in the sense that he is a real aspect to how a section of the right wing views the world. Now, there is a performance element to it in terms of his sort of interaction with that. But you see with this QAnon stuff that's popped up, which is also sort of all about conspiracy theories via 4chan and 8chan, is like this is a real thing. Like it's not like The Room where it's like ironic and it's self-aware. Like everybody who watches The Room is aware that it's a bad movie and is kind of makes fun of it. No, the people who are into Alex Jones take it seriously.
So your contention is that Alex Jones is effectively a war boss, and because there's enough of his followers that believe it to be
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
and through the power of the warp,
yeah.
everything that he says mystically becomes true.
I feel like
That's that.
eventually
That's
all our 40k references will eventually merge entirely with our show, and we're going to do like a politics and Warhammer like purely podcast. Yes, that is my. I mean, so and I think this is okay. now I've spent a lot of time debating this in the last couple of days. Like, why is this happening to Alex Jones? And I've literally have somebody said it's a conspiracy in the government to collude with the media companies, the tech companies to like shut him down, and so therefore we should treat it not as some sort of interaction in the market. And once you've abandoned free market principles in this area, you can use like non-market solutions. And my whole point is, well,
Yeah, I did say that, and I laughed my ass off.
yeah, it's like, well, okay, here's two options, right, of why Alex Jones was shut down. You have on one hand a shadowy cabal within the bureaucracy of the government, but not the administration itself, because the administration itself is pro Alex Jones and Alex Jones is pro Trump.
Yep.
That are putting pressure on the tech companies with no leverage, because there's no constitutional ability for like any branch of the government to tell them to do anything. They're colluding to shut down Alex Jones. Or you've got a bunch of... The alternative theory of why this has happened is you've got a bunch of lefties who run these tech companies who are incensed that Trump won. They think fake news was the reason. No one produces more fake news than Alex Jones. And therefore, they're getting in their desire to purge fake news that they've kicked Alex Jones off. Now that makes sense to me. That might be dumb.
But
like you might think that's a dumb reason.
I was going to say
that seems
really
to be like
reason.
the most logical reason why this has happened, and why they might have even colluded to do it. They might have even got together and said, "Hey, we all think this is a bad thing. Let's get rid of this bad thing."
I'll be honest. I think it was revenge. I think you're partly there, but that's why I brought up the James Gunn firing, because Alex Jones was one of the people on the James Gunn thing.
Yeah, that seems pretty plausible.
Yeah, because it was InfoWars people that that played archaeologist and brought up all of his previous tweets. It came out of the Paul Joseph.
Mike Cernovich is one of the big ones as well. But yeah, Paul Joseph.
Mike Cernovich.
So for the benefit of anybody who's not aware what this is, James Gunn is the director. In the beginning of his career, he basically did like shock movies. He worked for a company called Troma, which basically just all it does is it's completely outrageous movies. And 8 years ago, he made a bunch of comments about, I don't know what. It was like stuff to do with kids and rape and all sorts of really like shocking kind of comedy.
It was shock humor.
Shock humor.
Yeah.
Now James Gunn is now a well-respected director who works for Disney, who makes the Marvel movies. People unearthed this stuff, and James Gunn got fired. And it's also similarly with who was the other big one that they got? They got fired. There was another one who, in similar sort of Dan Harmon. They went up to Dan Harmon, the creator of Rick and Morty and Community, because of stuff he said on Twitter like a billion years ago.
So this is so to me this seems like a tit for tat thing.
Yeah.
So what they did is they went, look, he's been violating our policies for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just going to shut him down.
Yep.
So that's what it looks like to me. Sorry, that's what it looked like to me, right? And I was sitting there going like, I think this is over the James Gunn thing. But yeah, it does look like the culture war has actually escalated to the part where they're taking scalps now.
Yeah.
Effectively, right? So, and of course, we should be completely unsurprised. This is the natural consequence of if you weaponize outrage culture in this way.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I mean,
right?
Actually, that's an angle I didn't even think of, but that's actually, I think, a better way of thinking about it and why this is happening, and probably why it'll continue to happen. But you have to say, if you're a right winger, like, can you really engage with the tech companies who run the platforms at like a higher level than this? So in some ways, you're like by picking. This fight,
yes, you can.
Yeah.
So yes, you can. And let's be honest. So a good friend of ours, James Morrow, who does stuff for the telly, basically pointed out this thing saying "Get woke, go broke." Right. Yeah. A lot of these companies doing these woke kind of things and like banning these conservatives are finding their stock prices starting to tumble.
Yep.
And they get hit quite hard. And the reason why is because conservatives do move their money.
Yeah.
The left wingers typically don't. They'll find a spot and try and regulate that thing to look more like what they want. But right wingers do tend to move.
Yep.
Right. And already we're starting to see what is it, Mines? I think it was Mines and
Yeah.
Steam. They're the
Yep.
two things that people
There's
have been
Steam It, I think
spruiking
it's called.
as.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steam it. Yeah. And to be fair, I think so. Mines is something that I'm exploring
That's
having
like
an
a
outlet for this show
Twitter
on.
replacement, right?
Effectively, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and Steam it is basically an equivalent to Facebook. So I'm looking at both those avenues, and probably by the end of this week, we'll have an outlet for those as well,
Okay.
for this show, in case something we said offends either side at some point,
Sure.
and we find our show getting banned. Who knows? We're too small, but you never know how far the culture will go.
You never know.
Yeah. So, but the point is, like, in order to yeah, so we will be looking at that avenue. So this show will continue on across multiple platforms.
Sure.
Now, the question
I don't know what
becomes,
we do if Apple kicked us off, but we'll cross
well,
that barrier. Oh, I
to
guess
be
there's
perfectly
Stitcher.
fair,
There's Stitcher.
I have been looking at our Apple downloads. There hasn't been one for months. So
Oh,
quite
right.
frankly, if Apple kicks us off, it's just like, oh, okay,
Oh, well,
sure.
there you go.
But no, to the point. I mean, to the point of whether companies should do this or not. I think companies benefit from being agnostic, right?
Okay.
They clearly do. A certain amount of a certain amount of virtue signaling can work on certain campaigns, right? Like there are some things that are just universally popular and getting behind, like Christmas, like for example, charity during Christmas, right?
Yep.
And you can get a little bit like it's universally popular, you get a boost out of that. But picking these political fights and picking a side on these political fights, I think in the long term, they weaken the company's position. It may not happen immediately, right?
Mm.
But already we're seeing competitors like, would you say a week ago you even heard of Steemit and Mines?
Yes.
Right?
have.
I'd heard of I'd heard of Steemit, but I hadn't heard of Mines.
Okay.
And now I'm hearing about all sorts of alternatives to Facebook and Twitter, which I hadn't even considered before.
Yep.
Right? So to me, it was Facebook, Twitter, and fucking Google Plus, and Google Plus is fucking a
Well, and
distant
MySpace
third
before,
memory.
but yeah, really, it's been, sort of, and Twitter and Facebook in some ways are sort of seen as not strictly competitors, but sort of different sorts of platforms. So like if you want Twitter, you have a different sort of experience than if you use Facebook.
If you're an absolute narcissist, then yes, you use Twitter.
So I mean, I think. So platform. So I mean, this has probably been the big point of contention. It's like, is this, from a libertarian perspective, a good thing to happen? Often libertarians say,
I think it's
markets, private companies can do what they want. Strangely, I've seen a lot of people saying private companies can't do what they want on the libertarian forum, but I think that's just a problem with the
yeah
internet.
that. By the way, that confused me. And if you ask someone on the Australian Libertarian Forum and going, why are these two admins on the forum confused about libertarians being upset by this? It's because we think you are. Anytime a libertarian says,
like you. That's what's
no,
it's no confusion.
So,
It's just
no. My
nationalists.
general perception is whenever a libertarian says there ought to be a law or this law is justified because. I think you need to seriously assess what you believe because something's gone wrong there, right?
Yep.
Anytime you've come to that conclusion, there has to be some. Look, there are very very small instances, and I'm thinking like murder and theft, right?
Where actual
where
crimes with actual victims.
Actual crimes with actual victims, where the government needs to step in, and I'm just like, outside of those two, right? You have to do some serious thinking about how have I arrived at this position that the government needs to be involved in this.
Yeah.
And typically, you should arrive at the answer at no, the government doesn't need to involve in this. We just need to get back to civil society roots.
Yep.
Right?
But I mean, that still leaves open the question of which we've mentioned. We'll get back to now. Is this a good idea now? I actually don't have a feeling of whether it's a good idea or not because it's just a thing. I don't think there's any moral, I've seen a lot of moral outrage. Like, how dare they do this to Alex Jones? And I'm like, because they want to. Like it's a for me it's a morally neutral thing. Like I'm not like I've seen a lot of people like talking about how they're reconsidering using Facebook because of this. It's like, well, okay, cool. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it just seems like it's a complete overreaction. It's just a thing.
I no,
It's
I
it's
can
not it's
kind of
not
see
a
where
good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I guess if you don't like Alex Jones, it's a good thing, and if you like Alex Jones, it's a bad thing. But they're just preferences. It's just aesthetics. It's not. There's no principled reason to be
sure.
upset about this.
But I actually disagree with you. I think it's actually a bad thing, and it's this. It's a bad thing for the same reason as I said with the Christian bakers, where I was pretty much on Gary Johnson's side, where I said bake the fucking cake,
Yeah.
right? It's just like there is no. Is this the hill you want to die on, right? And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. Is this the hill that you want to die on? And we've covered this numerous times before, right? Where Milo got banned from something, and I said, "Is this the hill you want to die on?" Right? People saying stupid shit, right, is discredited by the fact that they said stupid shit. You don't need to go ahead and deplatform them. In fact, the more stupid shit they say, the fewer and fewer people will eventually end up listening to them. And the best example an Australian can get for that is Pauline Hanson, right?
Yeah.
Her first run at politics, she got 1 million votes. You know what she got this time around? 480,000, right? Her voter base is shrinking, despite what the media tells you, right? The every election you look at when she participates, she's getting a smaller and smaller chunk of the vote.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
in the last few state elections, there's been talk of this grand, one nation resurgence, and they're polling so great, and they've just managed to completely perform underwhelmingly each time. Each successive election, it seems like less likely that we're going to have this grand fascist takeover, marching behind Pauline Hanson.
Exactly. And because she's a politician, we can't stop her from talking, right?
Sure, yeah.
And her talking is what keeps killing her fucking party.
Yeah.
Right? She does not win additional votes talking the way she does.
Yeah.
She's just going after it. She's effectively chasing a dying vote.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's the reality of it. Like, just letting her talk has killed her own party. Now, contrast that with fucking Blair Cottrell. Fucking 2 years ago, this guy came on once on SBS and once on ABC, right? And that was it. Nobody knew anything about him after that. He was just like this random freak that they brought out onto the show, right? Now, because they keep they keep trying to put him in jail for hate speech, right? He keeps having a growing base because there are people who sympathize with, yeah, I should be allowed to say racist things.
Yep. It's like it's the Streisand effect. By making it an issue, you're drawing attention to it. Which I agree with that argument. Like to say that, like Alex Jones is going to have tons of donations. He's going to get a lot of support from people who think he's been badly treated as a result of this. Like I have no doubt that he's making money as a result of being kicked off these platforms. But I don't think on the same token, the guy's got 2 million weekly listeners on his radio show. Like I can type in infowars.com onto Facebook and it provides a preview. Like it's like all that's actually happened to him is that it's reduced his ability to officially promote his own stuff and make money through advertising through officially promoting his stuff on Facebook. YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Okay, that's actually denied him the ability to actually host his content. But having said that, he's got his own links. Like it's not like YouTube's not the only game in town for providing streaming video content.
No.
And same with Spotify and all the rest of it. And you can find links to it on his website. So like it's one of those things where he will take a hit from his revenue, and maybe it might be a little bit harder to like get his message out because he can't provide advertising for it on Facebook. But like, I think what you'll find is his website on the Alexa ratings will probably go through the roof because people now have to go directly to his website to actually access videos. And the people who the thing is about someone like Alex Jones is he's not exactly like, it's not like the New York Times or the Australian or like, a media producer that like has broad appeal. He is a niche provider. Like the kinds of people who want Alex Jones Like, there's a very specific kind of person who goes for Alex Jones. I imagine. I mean, you say you watch it for enjoyment. I suspect you don't watch it constantly. I've
No, no.
seen it
It pops up on
a
my
little
feed every
bit.
now and then.
Yeah, we probably see the
Yeah.
memes more than we actually see the actual content. Like, we see videos of him being
Yeah.
turned
The
into
gay
a folk song,
frogs.
the gay frogs, all that kind of stuff. But for like the people who want his stuff, they're gonna track it down. So like,
So I used to
so in
I
some
used
ways, I
to
think
watch
this is
him
almost
a
like
lot.
a storm in a teacup. Like, there's really his ability to do what
So
he wants to do has barely been touched.
So I used to watch him a lot in 2007, 2008.
Yep.
And back then, I swear to God, he was not semi-serious. I'd say he probably was really serious because like he covered a lot of electoral issues.
Yep.
And at that time, he was basically against. He was for Ron Paul, right?
Mm.
But he was against both McCain and Obama. If you go back and look at his 2007 2008 footage, he actually covers economics in quite an interesting level of detail. I mean, that was spattered in between his whole 9/11 was an inside job thing.
Yeah.
So there was always 9/11 was an inside job, and in between that, there was like serious news coverage. So it's weird to see, like, I kind of watched this show become more and more of this conspiracy thing.
Yeah.
It used to be like a little thing that was there in the middle, in between the news,
Yep.
and then it kind of just exploded to being all of it.
So Thomas Massey is a U.S. congressman, sort of a conservative libertarian guy, and he's got a great theory of kind of what happened with the Ron Paul movement, and like, so I'll actually have the quote. He said, "All this time, I thought they were voting for libertarian," talking about kind of people who voted for Ron Paul who now voted for Trump. He said, "All this time,
Yeah.
I thought they were voting for libertarian Republicans, but after some soul searching, I realized that when they voted for Rand and Ron and me in these primaries, they weren't voting for libertarian ideas. They were voting for the craziest son of the bitch in the race, and Donald Trump won best in class, and as we had until he came along." So like, I think that's the perfect explanation of why the Ron Paul, Alex Jones supported Ron Paul, because at that stage he was the crazy guy in the room. He was the one who would say something and like 10 people would like applaud wildly and everybody else kind of hated him.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and really it was like, the Obama presidency really opened up this kind of rich vein of just
pure crazy.
Just pure crazy, and he's the perfect villain for pure crazy. If you've got these, let's be honest, like, racially inclined conspiracy people open to conspiracy theories, like, you could not write a better villain than Barack Obama. So
Nope, you could. Hillary Clinton.
well, but like I don't know. I think in some ways
Because she had links. No, because she, unlike Obama, so the link, it was really hard to make the link between Obama and Goldman Sachs, right?
sure,
And they had to do
that's a
that
good point.
they had to do that, yeah, they had to do that via, what's her face? Via Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
Yeah. Whereas Clinton's associations with Goldman Sachs are quite in the open,
yeah, it's true.
right?
And when you get to
And
Goldman
the
Sachs, you get to
Clintons-
the Jews, and that's where the real problems start.
That's what I was going to say. And
Yeah.
then you get to the Jews, and then the shit hits the fan.
Yeah,
So, I mean, you couldn't, like, yes. Yes, Obama was a good toss for that, but Hillary Clinton was better, and that's why they all lined up behind Donald Trump, because it was just like, hey, this guy, he's our guy. He's a dude,
yeah,
right? And he's not just a dude, he's a white dude.
yeah.
He's
So
a white dude.
to sort of talk about, okay, where to from here, I'm okay with the splintering of social media. So the thing, like, I've seen, I think it's James Fox Higgins, who's part of the Rational Rise. He talk about going to
We got to get him
Gab.
on the show at some stage.
Probably
Yeah.
should, actually. He's talked about going to Gab, which is
Yep.
a social
Oh, that's
media
another one I'll have to look
platform
at.
I'm never going to use, because essentially it's the place where all the people who got all the alt-right kind of race realist guys, when they got kicked off Twitter, they all moved to Gab, and nothing says
So
keep
you're
the hell
saying,
away from
wait,
me
wait,
as racial realists and alt-right going to a social media platform. Like, for me,
wait,
I was like,
wait,
no.
you're telling me that the racial realists have all congregated into one space
Pretty much.
and
They
effectively
do
created an echo chamber.
claim that like neo Nazis are like too hardcore for them, and they kick off neo Nazis, and the neo Nazis don't like Gab for that reason. But that doesn't sound like an endorsement to me. Like that doesn't really, you know.
I always find racial realists amusing. Because I sit there and go like, so literally,
Well, you are of
you're
the correct brown skin or the non-white to be like okay with race realists though, because you know Asians, which Indians are, you know,
yeah,
you guys are like higher
not
IQ than
really.
white, so you know,
Well, we have,
racial
yeah,
privilege. Come
sure,
on,
but
you need to have some like, yeah,
yeah, but their argument is that we're less creative, and I sit there going like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's just like we've written like six of the stories that are like sorry like the some of the greatest stories ever known, like Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita,
yeah,
right? Like stories that are told by billions of people. We wrote those,
yeah.
right? And that's me being a collectivist, right? But I sit there and go like, what I find amusing about racial realists is they're literally telling me that their life, the biggest achievement in their life, is being born a skin color,
Yeah.
right? And I sit there and go like, that's the biggest achievement in your life. I'm like,
That's
I've
why
worked on
above and beyond, I
multi-billion.
just find them boring. Like I'm just like, is that
Yeah,
really is what like that's what like out of all the things in
no,
human experience that are meaningful, you think the content of the level of melanin in your skin is like that's the shit. That's what life is really about. And I just I just think that's kind of
yeah,
lame and
exactly.
sad.
Yeah, it's a point of amusement for me, and I just
Yeah.
sit there and go like, wow, you got nothing going on in your life, do you,
Yeah.
pal?
But, you know, like as
Yeah.
a hobby, hey, all power to them. You know, like it's not my hobby. It's not what I care about. If they care about it, you know, that's fine. I just don't want them anywhere near government. Um, all right. Well,
Okay, I
okay.
suppose we should.
We want to touch one other thing before we finish. But there are any sort of final thoughts? Like where to from here? Re social media and Alex Jones.
Look,
Is there? I mean, there's no
I've
easy, obvious solution here. Like it's not like they're gonna let him
no,
back
and
on.
yeah. So look, obviously, what's gonna happen if they continue down this path is social media will be fractured.
Yep.
That's not a big deal,
No.
right? It just means people will have to be members of across multiple platforms in order to talk to all the people that they want. And we kind of already do that, right? Like we chat over the phone, we chat over
Hmm.
WhatsApp, we chat over like more or less we're already fragmented. Someone said something along the lines of we've got these powerful companies controlling what social media we have access to, and I sat there going like absolutely fucking not. Back in the day, you had ICQ and maybe AOL,
Yeah.
right? AOL Instant Messenger, and I think MSN Instant Messenger,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That was the one I used.
Yeah, those were your three modes of communication back in the 90s, right? You look at it now, you've got WhatsApp for your close friends, you've got MSN, sorry, you've
You
got
got Telegraph
Facebook
for
for
your
some
drug dealers.
you got Telegraph and Signal for your
Yeah.
drug dealers
Yeah.
if you
That's
have
right. Yep.
any.
And your
Yeah,
terrorism
yep.
homies. You know, because they're gonna keep in touch
And
with
your
those
terrorism
guys.
homies. Yeah, I forgot about my terrorism homies. But yeah, I mean, there's and by the way,
We're
I
joking,
like my
NSA.
friends.
Please don't arrest us.
Actually, to be perfectly honest, Signal is my favorite to use because I can literally divide all my friends on Signal between security professionals and frequent drug users. I'm
Okay.
just like the only reason
Yeah.
you are on here is because you're a drug user.
I mean,
That's
I
and
think
by the way,
the other thing, the other thing
that
with
should be a ringing endorsement for Signal. By the
yeah,
way,
no,
it
yeah,
is
we
used
would
by
endorse
security
Signal for the
professionals.
use of trading drugs. Um, so I think what would be interesting to see is firstly, well, I mean, people might go to leave Facebook. You know, so I've seen maybe 2 or 3 people who said, "Oh, yeah, I'm giving up Facebook." Well, that's all good and well, but you know, being the 2 or 3 people who leave Facebook and going to Minds and the 1,000 people they've got there, that's great, but it's not necessarily like what you want to do in the long term. And also, Facebook, you know, these companies might be like, well, yeah, okay, we're not going to let Alex Jones back on, but maybe we'll sort of be a bit clearer in terms of, you know, like they might make some sort of mea culpa or, you know, like make some sort of amends. Because, I mean, in reality, these big tech giants are not monolithic Borg like entities. You know, like just because some hardcore lefty was like got a boner for getting rid of Alex Jones doesn't mean that like the rest of the organization are gonna be like, yeah, that's cool, let's keep doing that. You know,
No.
these things are dynamic entities, and they might make other decisions. So it will be interesting how it plays out. Um,
Yep.
Now, before we finish,
Speaking of mea culpas.
yeah, mea culpa. Um, so when we talked about the Tommy Robinson thing back in whatever episode it must have been sort of a couple of months ago. I heavily
Yeah.
relied, and we sort of discussed a article produced by the Secret Barrister, commenting on kind of
Yep.
issues around Tommy Robinson, and as a result of the judgment that was kind of laid down, as opposed, because of Tommy Robinson's appeal, the Secret Barrister actually kind of semi-retracted, or basically said that they were too hasty in jumping to conclusions.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's our fault for not being critical in reading that stuff. But see, here's the issue is Lee and I are both not lawyers. I mean, Zeev is, but we're not lawyers.
And we're not British lawyers in like that particular, field of law.
Yeah.
And neither is
dealing. Yeah, neither is it. So, like, no one here actually has the expertise to comment on things like that at a like technical level.
Yep.
Right. So we rely on people who are experts to kind of make that determination. And the source that we picked for this, which to be fair, a lot of other people picked as well.
Yeah.
Got certain things wrong, and he's kind of like I love how he's like halfway stepped into it and gone like, should I be better? Yes, but like
Yeah. Well, actually, to be honest,
it.
the article, and we'll put a link to the article in the show notes. The author, whoever they are, said, imperfect information makes for imperfect judgments, which is exactly what we're saying here. So, it is what it is. We acted in good faith, and we always try to, for anybody who thinks out there who thinks we maybe don't, we try to act in good faith, and we try to be open. And sometimes people criticize us, and you're free to do that. And you usually both interact with people who criticize us on our Facebook page or whatever. So,
actually, to be perfectly honest, I encourage that interaction. Just because it makes it better.
We honestly
even if you're hating on us, like that's to be perfectly honest, I value the hate more than the actual love, just because the hate actually tells me like what people are thinking. And I mean, I'll be like, I completely disagree with you, but hey, okay. But in the case of Tommy Robinson, so a couple of points. So basically, I think we shouldn't have been so uncritical of it. So there are a couple of things that the Secret Barrister claimed, which should have immediately sparked alarms in our libertarian hearts, because he said, Speedy. I think one of the claims he made was not giving the defense an appropriate chance to mount a case, which is what a lot of people are claiming happened to Tommy. Right, and he said that that's perfectly normal for a contempt of court proceeding, and that should have rung alarm bells to us, because that's clearly a miscarriage of justice. Right, I would call that a miscarriage of justice if defense is not allowed to mount a case. Now, it turns out in the appeal for Tommy Robinson, that was one of the reasons why his contempt of court contempt of court charge was repealed.
Yep.
The other thing that he said was completely normal, which was completely wrong, was that it wasn't clear which charge. So what he was in contempt of court of, right?
Yep.
Basically, he said like the judge kind of laughed at him and said, no, it's a contempt of court. And the appeal very amusingly says there was a muddle about what the contempt of court was over, right? Because he was arrested on breaching the peace, and then that turned into contempt of court.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a muddle over that. And that's what a lot of people pointed out. And he said, no, that's absolutely fine. Turns out that that's not actually true. So these are things that we should have been more critical of and not so accepting of.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's covering it for this episode of Taking Liberties. Of course, as we said, we love your feedback. Please comment on our Facebook pages while we still have them. And YouTube videos. And we'll be back again with more discussion of libertarian ideas, maybe even a slogan. Actually, if you have a good slogan, let us know. We could do with a slogan, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us.
I was going to say Lorgar did nothing wrong.
That merging Totally happening. All right.